The world of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is defined by rules. Stands have ranges, power ratings, and specific abilities. But what happens when the author breaks his own rules? Throughout the decades of publication, from Stardust Crusaders to JoJolion and the obscure light novels, there are powers that were introduced and then immediately deleted. Abilities that break the laws of physics so badly they create paradoxes, and concepts that were banned for legal reasons. These are the forbidden arts of the JoJo canon, the glitches in the system. Today we are opening the file on every forbidden stand ability, every scrapped mechanic, and every narrative paradox that Araki tried to hide. First scrapped mechanic, Diver Down's energy storage. We begin our investigation in the middle arcs of Stone Ocean, specifically during the chaotic introduction of Narciso Anasui. When this character is first properly unveiled in the manga, his stand, Diver Down, is not presented as the phaser or structural rearranger we know today. Instead, it debuts with a terrifyingly latent ability. The power to store kinetic impact inside an object and release it only when the user desires. In its debut scene, Anasui strikes a prison guard. However, there is no immediate effect. The force of the punch is suspended, stored within the guard's body like a kinetic battery. It is only later, when the guard interacts with a specific object, that the energy is unleashed, blowing his limbs apart instantly. This mechanic established Anasui as a trap setter, a tactical genius who plants invisible bombs of force. However, as the Stone Ocean narrative accelerated toward the high-octane Dragon's Dream and Green Baby arcs, this ability vanished. It was functionally forbidden by the narrative flow itself. The fast-paced, reactive nature of Part 6 battles left no room for a passive trap setter who needed prep time. Consequently, Diver Down was soft rebooted into a close-range power type capable of phasing into objects to restructure them or take damage for allies. The energy storage is a phantom mechanic, a remnant of a character draft that was overwritten in real time. Second forbidden mechanic, Gold experiences damage reflection. This anomaly appears at the very beginning of Golden Wind, Part 5. During the initial confrontation between Giorno Giovanna and Leaky Eye Luca, and shortly after against Koichi Hirose, Gold experience demonstrates a defensive passive that is arguably the most broken ability in the entire franchise history. The mechanic is simple but devastating. If a living creature created by Gold experience is attacked, 100% of that damage is reflected back to the attacker. When Luca smashes a shovel into a frog created by Giorno, the frog remains unharmed, but the indentation of the shovel appears instantly on Luca's own skull, killing him. This ability is quietly removed from the canon immediately after the Black Sabbath. Oh, fight. The narrative implication was simply too catastrophic. If Giorno had retained this power, he would have had no need for strategy or teammates. He could have simply covered his body in life-created vines or frogs, rendering himself invincible to physical trauma. To maintain tension and allow the assassination team to threaten the protagonist, this reflectability was forbidden and erased from the stand's kit without explanation. Third forgotten tool, Magician's Red's Heat Radar. This tool was introduced early in Stardust Crusaders, during the Crossfire Hurricane duel between Avdol and Polnareff. In a moment of tactical brilliance, Avdol commands his stand to generate a cross-shaped grid of fire that functions as a biological heat sensor. He explicitly states that this radar tracks life signs and movement through the flames, allowing him to locate enemies in obscured terrain. This technique is a narrative breaker. It solves the problem of ambushes too easily. In a series defined by hidden enemies, surprise attacks, and enemy stand users lurking in the shadows, a perfect radar removes the element of suspense. After the fight with Polnareff, Avdol never utilizes this radar again, even in situations like the battle against Ndul or Vanilla Ice, where detecting a hidden enemy would have saved lives. It is a logic breaker that was stripped away to preserve the horror elements of the later arcs. Fourth narrative glitch, the Sandman, Retcon. This glitch occurs in the early chapters of Steel Ball Run. The antagonist Sandman is introduced running alongside horses, keeping pace through what appears to be the physical manipulation of earth and sand. The visual language of the manga explicitly shows sand warping around his feet to propel him forward. implying he wields a physical matter manipulation stand. However, when his stand is fully revealed later in the story as in a silent way, it is a sound-based ability that stores sound effects like whoosh or slash into solid objects. The early feats of stand manipulation become a narrative paradox. There is no logical way for a sound stand to warp sand dunes for propulsion. This is widely regarded as a conceptual retcon, where the author likely changed the character's theme from sand to sound mid-publication, rendering the early chapters a forbidden depiction of a power that no longer exists in the canon. Fifth Legal Ban, Bohemian Rhapsody's Mickey Mouse. Located in the final arc of Stone Ocean, the stand Bohemian Rhapsody brings fictional characters to life. In the original manga publication, the chaos is global and references real-world intellectual property. Characters explicitly scream, "Where the fuck is Mickey?" And the narrative confirms that Mickey Mouse has come to life, showing his iconic tail disappearing around a corner. This is a copyright ban. While the ability works in-universe, the depiction of Disney's flagship character was a legal minefield. In the anime adaptation and subsequent game appearances, this specific reference is scrubbed or altered to avoid real-world litigation. The ability to summon specifically licensed corporate icons is a power forbidden not by stand logic, but by international copyright law, making this one of the few abilities that transcends the story to interact with real-world lawyers. Sixth Metaforce, The Beyond. This is a non-canonical concept originating in the light novel Jorge Joestar. This is not a stand, but a metagod force. In the novel, certain characters realize they are living inside a fictional narrative. The Beyond is the force that acts as the author's will. It is weaponized plot armor. If a character is favored by the Beyond, they cannot die, regardless of the logical impossibility of their survival, simply because they are the main character of the current arc. It is the forbidden knowledge that the universe is scripted. Characters who wield or understand the Beyond can manipulate the flow of the story itself, effectively overruling the abilities of standard stands. It deconstructs the medium, acknowledging that stand users are merely puppets for the writer, and allows the user to win simply because the script says they must. Seventh Forbidden Stand, The Book. Featured in the book, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Fourth, Another Day, this stand belongs to Takuma Hasumi. The stand records everything the user experiences into a physical book. This seems passive until the empathy mechanic is revealed. Hasumi can force another person to read a memory from the book. The target does not just view the memory, they physically experience it. If Hasumi records the memory of his own body being stabbed or burned, and then forces you to read that page, your body spontaneously develops the stab wound or burn mark. It is a suicide-packed weapon. It turns shared trauma into a physical attack, bypassing durability. This ability is forbidden in a moral sense because it requires the user to endure horrific torture first, making it a weapon of mutually assured destruction that relies on the user's willingness to suffer. Eighth Canonical Anomaly, Remote Romance. This is a stand that exists outside the standard manga or anime. It was introduced during the Hirohiko Araki 2012 exhibition in Tokyo. Remote Romance is a stand that exists purely within the computer network. It has no physical user in the traditional sense. Instead, it was controlled by real-world users via a livestream chat on Google+. The stand manifests as a pixelated, hooded figure capable of interacting with the physical world to a limited degree. It represents a Phygital breach, a stand that bridges the gap between the fictional JoJo universe and the real-world audience. It is considered a ghost in the machine, a stand that survives as long as the internet exists, making it virtually immortal and impossible to hunt down using traditional stand combat rules. It is a canonical acknowledgement that the internet is a dimension of its own. Ninth Scrapped Concept, Soft and Wet's Screw Attachment. This is a scrapped concept from the early drafts of JoJolion, Part 8. Originally, the protagonist Josuke was intended to have a stand that could attach screws to objects and people, allowing him to disassemble them piece by piece. This mechanical concept was deemed too similar to the plunder ability, stealing properties via bubbles, and was abandoned for the protagonist. However, the concept was not deleted entirely. It was recycled and given to the antagonist Joshu Higashikata as the Stand Nut King Call. This represents a transplanted ability, a power forbidden for the hero because it lacked versatility, but perfect for a side character who operates on rigid deconstructionist logic. It is a rare glimpse into the recycling bin of Araki's creative process. 10th Fatal Concept, Rolling Stones. Appearing in the epilogue of Golden Wind, this stand is a literal fate enforcement device. It takes the form of a rock that sculpts itself into the dying shape of a specific person. If the target touches the stone, they die instantly and painlessly. If they resist and change the stone's shape, they are condemned to a violent, agonizing death later. This ability is forbidden in a philosophical sense because it confirms that fate in JoJo is absolute. It reveals that the struggles of the heroes are technically meaningless, as their deaths were carved in stone before the arc began. It is a narrative weapon that attacks the concept of free will, essentially telling the audience that the ending was written before the first chapter was drawn. 11th Biological Paradox, Heavy Weather's Snail Projection. Found in the late arcs of Stone Ocean, this is one of the most bizarre leaps in logic in the series. Weather Report's ability manipulates the atmosphere to create rainbows. However, the true danger is visual. Through the refraction of light, the stand projects a subliminal message into the eyes of anyone who views the rainbows. The message convinces the victim's brain that they are a snail. The forbidden aspect is that the body complies. Victims physically transform into snails, growing shells, losing bone structure, and slowing down, solely because their mind believes it is happening. This violates the boundary between psychology and biology. It implies that in the JoJo universe, if you can convince a living thing it is something else, reality bends to match the delusion. It is a power that rewrites genetics through hypnosis. 12th Spatial Violation, Cube House. This is a non-canonical concept from the Jorge Joestar novel. This stand manifests as a literal building containing non-Euclidean geometry. It violates the ghost rule, the rule that stands are spiritual projections near the user. Instead, the stand is a pocket dimension where gravity and space are looped. The user can manipulate the rooms of the house to trap victims in infinite falling loops or impossible spatial configurations, similar to an M.C. Escher painting brought to life. It is a spatial violation stand, functioning more like a localized reality warp than a fighting spirit. It represents the extreme end of stand logic, where the user becomes the environment itself, and the only way to win is to escape the architecture. 13th Body Horror, Rear Window. Another entry from the Jorge Joestar novel. This ability allows the user to detach their own eyes, which then sprout wings and turn into flies. These eye flies can travel independently to spy on targets. It is a body horror variant of remote viewing. Unlike standard remote stands like Aerosmith, this requires the mutilation of the user's own sensory organs. It pushes the concept of stand as an extension of the body to a grotesque literalism, turning the user's biology into a surveillance swarm. It is a forbidden technique because of the sheer visceral cost to the user, stripping away their humanity to gain information. 14th Logic Glitch, King Crimson's Time Erasure. The central antagonist ability of Golden Wind. While the official explanation is erasing time, the execution creates a logical void that fans have debated for decades. Diavolo claims to erase a segment of time up to 10 seconds, leaving only the results. The forbidden paradox lies in the interaction. How can Diavolo react to movements within erased time if that time does not exist? How can falling drops of blood be used to count the seconds of erased time if the duration itself is deleted? This ability functions on author authority. It is a glitch in the laws of physics that allows the user to step outside of causality. It is less of a time manipulation and more of a scene skip button that only the villain is allowed to press, breaking the continuity of cause and effect in a way that defies explanation. 15th Permanent Glitch, Notorious B.I.G. Appearing in the middle of Golden Wind, this stand violates the death rule. Standard lore dictates that if the user dies, the stand disappears. Notorious B.I.G. only activates when the user dies. Driven by residual hate, it becomes an autonomous entity of infinite energy. It consumes matter to grow and reacts to movement. Because the user is already dead, there is no way to defeat the stand. It is a game-breaking bug in the power system. The only solution was to dump it into the Tyrrhenian Sea, where it remains canonically active to this day, attacking waves and passing ships. It is a permanent scar on the world, an unkillable monster created by a loophole in the life-death cycle of stand energy. 16th Nature Violation, Grand Blue. From the Jorge Joestar novel, this stand transforms the user into a massive sentient tornado of water and debris. It is a nature violation. Unlike water-based stands like Geb, which simply control water, Grand Blue is the water. The user's human form is erased entirely, replaced by a devastating environmental hazard. It represents the loss of humanity in exchange for raw power, turning the user into a living natural disaster that creates its own ecosystem of destruction. It is forbidden because it erases the user from the stand user equation. 17th Multiversal Variant, NYPD Blue. Also from the Jorge Joestar novel, this is an alternate universe variant of Mista's Sex Pistols. Instead of 6 bullet-riding spirits, the stand manifests as tiny, cross-dressing police officers. While functioning similarly, redirecting bullets, the aesthetic shift represents the infinite possibility of the multiverse proposed in Part 6. It is a bizarre variant that highlights how stand appearances are shaped by the psyche of the user in different timelines, turning a gangster's weapon into a twisted parody of law enforcement. It serves as a reminder that stand abilities are not constant across dimensions. 18th Physics Violation, Sea Moon's gravity inversion, the precursor to Made in Heaven in Stone Ocean. Sea Moon possesses the ability to invert gravity, but specifically for objects it touches. This is not just lifting things up, it turns them inside out. If Sea Moon punches a human chest, the gravity of that specific area reverses. The heart and lungs are pulled outward through the ribcage, turning the body inside out. It is a physics violation that ignores durability. There is no defense against your own body repelling itself. This ability represents the concept of turning the world upside down, in its most literal, visceral form, serving as the bridge to the total universe reset that follows. It is a forbidden touch that breaks the structural integrity of life itself,